knowsbest.com.
Well, welcome to series number 2 of A Walk with Knows Best, where we talk about the Nasal Cycle Optimization Theory. And in today's 15-minute walk, we're going to talk about the theory of nasal cycle optimization. And we're going to talk about the theory of theories in general. I think it's important because the nasal cycle optimization theory, I believe, is a big one. And then we're also going to talk about another theory, which is that very possibly the YouTube algorithm that is actually sharing me with you right now is capable of doing research and coming to conclusion. It's a lot smarter than it was back in the old days, like say 6 months ago at the beginning of 2025. So let's dig right in. But first, just a couple of housekeeping notions. Number one is that this is not medical advice. If you have something wrong with your nose, please see a clinician. It's the smartest thing you can possibly do. If you're in the social media business and you see something that can be improved, let me know. I'm totally new at this. And then also, if you're actually a clinician in the business, I would love to hear from you. My book, Knows Best, N-O-S-E-B-E-S-T, like Knows Best, is going to be coming out in the spring of 2026. And it's being edited right now, and we have 102 references in there. And if you're in the business, if you're an ENT, give me a call, and would love to get you a copy and have you take a look at it for review. So what I hope that you will expect to learn in the remaining 13 minutes here is what the theory of nasal cycle optimization is, why it's important, and also why it is you should consider something this radical, because it is. And then finally, we're going to talk about how it is that the YouTube algorithm is going to be able to sort this out for us, probably a lot cheaper than doing decades of studies through governments or through research foundations or universities. So let's just dig right in. So the nasal cycle is the tendency in humans to congest on one side of their face and switch back and forth about 10 times a day. The nasal cycle is observed in most mammals and in most humans. Now, nasal cycle optimization theory is a theory that if you can really get congestion on one side, not just a little bit, but a lot, and same way on the other side, back and forth about 10 times a day, that congestion is good when you do it that way, because during that period of congestion, that's when the cells of your nasal tissue actually repair themselves. And so when you optimize your cycle, you repair yourself faster than you can damage yourself. Now, we'll talk about a few nasal cycle optimization techniques, but before that, I want to talk about what the theory is. I believe that if you optimize your nasal cycle, that you'll have profound positive health effects. And now I'm going to kind of digress for a minute, because we're going to talk about what a theory is, okay? Remember that a theory is a statement of bias. Like, for example, the speed of light is the same in all reference frames. That got Einstein in trouble for about 13 years until they had a solar eclipse and people observed that, well, guess what? That's exactly what it appears to be. So I'm going to make some radical statements here. These are statements of bias. That's okay to make these statements because it is a scientific theory. And what our job now is to do is to prove that that bias is wrong, that is biased. Or realize, well, wait a minute, it appears to be not biased. Now, that takes us to the YouTube algorithm. If you're seeing this right now, you are part of this experiment. And if you're not seeing it, you're also part of the experiment, okay? Because the YouTube algorithm is trying to figure out what people are interested in, what works for them. And so what I'd ask you to do if you're looking at this is kind of the opposite of what most people say is don't like this, okay? Don't send this to all your friends. Try it out, work it yourself, and if you see that it has merit, only then let somebody else know about it. Because if we all do it that way, theoretically, this algorithm is going to figure out really quick whether this theory, this nasal cycle optimization theory, has any merit, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be very biased right now, and I'm talking about what I believe nasal cycle optimization theory does. Now, oh boy, and also the reason I'm doing this while I'm walking is because I'm breathing through my mouth when I walk and when I talk. Those are two really bad combinations because that is a surefire recipe for crashing your nasal cycle, which also gives us a good opportunity to reboot it. And so we'll be able to demonstrate that right now. So, and I meant to do this before I got started, but let's listen to how congested I am right now. So that's one side. This side is pretty much shut down. Okay, so I'm breathing through this side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the sniff, sniff, snort like a golden retriever. There's a whole section on how I learned that from my golden retriever. But what I'm going to do is sniff that down. I'm going to wait a minute and sniff down some more. But basically, I'm breathing through this side. But when I'm talking, I'm not breathing through this side. When I'm not breathing through my nose, that is the signal that causes congestion. So in other words, if you're in sales or tech support and you're talking all the time, or if you're like a trainer and you're talking, it's very likely you're going to have allergies, sleep apnea, snoring. My theory would say that that's supposed to happen, okay? So here's what I think is happening is when you get congested, suddenly it starts a cycle of repair. And the first thing that happens, and I've tested this by testing the pH in my nostrils. What happens, first thing that happens is you get the tissue between your nostril and your cartilage and bones swells. It's vascular tissue. It swells up. It shuts that nostril down hard. And when it does, the first thing that happens is there's a release of histamines. Histamines are acids, and they're designed to kill bacteria, germs, mold, insects, and dissolve that stuff. Now, those acids are powerful, and they damage you as well as all the stuff that you don't want. Now, the next thing that happens is you'll actually get a release of anti-inflammatory substances that actually help you not be affected by the histamines. And then after that, there's actually anti-inflammatories that come in. The main point I'm making as far as this theory is it's a process. It's like the washing machine cycle. It happens in the same order at the same every time for a reason. So the other things we've observed is that there's also chemicals that cause an apoptotic signal. What is that? That's a death signal that causes cells that are kind of marginal, that have been partially damaged. Those signals are released into those tissues. And remember, this is when it's all shut down. If you have it open up, none of this is happening very well. As a matter of fact, it's kind of like running your washing machine upside down with a lid open. It doesn't work very well. So when you have it shut down, all of these things can happen really efficiently. So you get this apoptotic signal. It kills your marginal cells. And then you have a signal that is these copper peptides. Basically, that causes cell regeneration and growth. It causes the stem cells to get active. So during these periods of tight closure, you're actually remanufacturing your tissues of your nose. It's not like you're just, fixing them. You're actually building it back like better than new, okay? Now, what does that do when that happens? Now, remember, this is just a theory. What that means is that now you start breathing through your nose becomes more and more healthy. And what do we know happens then? Well, we know that Sinuses produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is now a critical signaling pathway all the way from your nose to the rear end, you know. It controls the tenor of the vascular system of your blood vessels. So like this morning, I'm 70 years old. My blood pressure was 115 over 57. I've got more continuous output than I ever had in my youth. And, you know, I'm breathing from one side to another. You know, this whole thing about pranayama, breathing in and out and all that stuff, I think it's bunk. I'm sorry. Whether I can spend 2.5, 3 hours breathing on one side, and then I switch to 3 or 4 hours breathing on the other side, I cannot tell if I'm like more relaxed or, you know, more tense or anything. It's bullshit, you know, sorry. And there's a lot of evidence now coming out that that theory is probably somewhat misguided. The vagus nerve is, and or the relationship between your nose and your guts coming down is we know a lot more than we knew about 3,000 years ago with the yogis. I apologize, but that's the way it is. So I believe that once you get this nasal thing going, your nitric oxide increases. That's great for immune health, but that's just the beginning. When you have more nitric oxide, in the last 3 years, like researchers like Dr. Newell at Virginia Mason and his contemporaries in Germany, they've discovered that the vascular system of your brain actually contracts and causes the space between your brain and your blood vessels to actually pump lymphatic fluid through. Well, for the last 10 years, I've been sleeping with the open side down like this, and not only do I have more nitric oxide, so I'm getting better brain rinsing, but it's actually draining down my nasal, that conduit, and so I'm basically using gravity. So I'm sleeping better. I mean, I can never sleep. I wake up in the morning and think, oh my God, please, Lord, give me like 6 more minutes. And now, shoot, I go to bed at like 1:30. I'm up at 6:30. I don't need any coffee. I'm just ready to go. And so the other thing is that when you're producing the right amount of mucus, right? In other words, you've repaired yourself. All those cells are recharged. You've got the fluids and they're ready to roll. When you open up and start breathing, what happens is you're producing more mucus, and it's healthier. You're not infected. You're not washing a whole bunch of bacteria down into your stomach. So all that mucus, it's been shown that lines your gut all the way down. It's kind of like if you spraying water around in a well as opposed to just throwing a big bucket of water down the well. I mean, let's be gross, but you know, if you look at what you poop out, it kind of looks like mucus. Well, there's a lot of studies showing that that's exactly what it is. In other words, it oiled you all the way down, which I think that by my nasal cycle optimization theory should have profound effects on leaky gut syndrome. And I'll take it a step further. I think it's going to have profound effects on autoimmune diseases. I mean, you can look and see that these comorbidities for autoimmune diseases are associated with allergies and with asthma, sleep apnea, and snoring. What's that all associated with? Bad nasal cycle management, right? I'm taking it remember, this is just a theory, just like gravity. It's still not proven yet, right? And it's a statement of bias that we can all test, okay? But I think at the end of the day, we're going to find out that Alzheimer's and dementia are also can be actually affected, or let's just say improved dramatically by optimizing the nasal cycle. I think that we'll discover very quickly that, in fact, when people understand this and they're doing it correctly, that goes down, that the incidence of dementia goes down. Once again, we know that the amyloids are supposed to be in the brain. Those fats, those unsaturated fats, cholesterol, that's what your brain is made of. But the plaques are supposed to be washed out, but they don't get washed out. Why? Well, there's comorbidities between allergies, asthma, and dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Why? Well, because when the vasculature isn't getting enough pumping through the brain and you're not letting it drain out, so all that stuff's, clogging your brain. I mean, there's all these new studies about microplastics happening in the brain. I'm not afraid of that out. I'm washing all that crap out. I mean, it doesn't bother me a bit. Statement of bias, right? Now, do we know this stuff? No, right? We don't, okay? But how do we quickly figure this out? Well, that goes to the second part of the theory. We're almost up with our 15 minutes. Can the algorithm at YouTube figure this out better than sending $1 billion to Harvard or waiting 20 years for the US government and the FDA to kind of test some grand, double-blind placebo thing. I mean, some of that stuff you shouldn't even be performing on prisoners. So, well, my thought is that as people start to understand this, they're going to go, wow, that really works for me, okay? Or this is BS, right? Doesn't matter. I don't care. It's just a theory. It is very possible that I'm a lunatic. I'm the only person on earth that this has just profoundly helped. I mean, I've tried to read and see if there's anything like it. You think that somebody since the beginning of the earth would have thought of this first before me, but there's a lot of reasons why maybe I was the first one. I've got a pretty strange, interesting story about how I got to this point that I can see why maybe nobody else got here. So once again, it's just a theory, and we'll see how it works. But that's your 15-minute walk with Knows Best. KnowsBest.com. The book is coming. Good luck. Knows Best Weekly, where we learn nasal cycle optimization theory and live on one nostril at a time.